They came in silence, descending from the void like gods. Their warships, black as the abyss, hung in the sky, blotting out the stars. The Zalzorath had conquered hundreds of worlds, this one would be no different. Their intelligence was clear, no advanced defenses, no planetary shields, no signs of interstellar travel. The inhabitants were primitive, scattered, and weak. An easy conquest. The first dropships landed in a vast forest, dense and untouched. The air was thick with oxygen, richer than most worlds they had claimed. Their scanners detected life, millions of species, but nothing capable of true resistance. The ground teams moved with precision, establishing a forward base. Towering machines hummed as they drilled into the soil, extracting samples. The planet's resources would serve the Empire well. Then, things began to go wrong. Their instruments faltered, readings fluctuating between extremes. Weather patterns shifted unpredictably, skies clear one moment, a raging storm the next. Their communication links suffered interference, distorted by an unknown source. The officers dismissed it as environmental anomalies. They had seen stranger worlds. Hours into the operation, the first deaths were reported. A scout team sent to survey the nearby terrain failed to return. Their locator beacons remained active, but the signals bounced erratically, impossible to pinpoint. Drones were dispatched, sweeping the area with infrared and motion sensors. They found nothing, no wreckage, no bodies, only the wind whispering through the trees. More casualties followed. Soldiers vanished in the night, their bunkers empty by morning. Others were found torn apart, wounds unlike anything in the Empire's records. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no insects, just an oppressive stillness. Panic spread through the ranks. The officers tightened security, doubling perimeter defenses. Automated sentries lined the base, scanning for threats. The Zalzorath were not afraid. They had conquered nightmares before. But something was watching them. The first attack came without warning. A sentry drone detected movement just beyond the perimeter, then static. When soldiers arrived to investigate, they found nothing but the drone's shattered remains, its metal casing twisted as if by immense force. No energy signatures, no projectile traces. It was as if something had simply crushed it. Then the jungle itself turned against them. A thick fog rolled in, clinging to their suits, distorting their vision. Shapes moved in the mist, quick flashes of motion that their sensors couldn't track. Something was stalking them. They fired into the shadows, plasma rounds lighting up the dark, but they hit nothing. Their thermal scans showed the jungle teeming with life, yet every creature remained hidden, silent. Their advanced armor should have protected them, but it failed. Soldiers screamed as swarms of insects burrowed into their suits, shorting out circuits, clogging air filters. The more they fought, the worse it became. Vines coiled around their equipment, creeping into cracks, strangling power supplies. Even the ground betrayed them, sinkholes swallowed entire squads, the earth splitting open beneath their feet. The officers ordered a retreat, regrouping at the central command post. They sealed the perimeter, activating energy barriers, bringing in heavier weapons. The base became a fortress, but the attacks didn't stop. Their water became contaminated overnight, soldiers who drank it fell ill, their bodies convulsing as an unknown toxin invaded their systems. Food rations spoiled within hours, flesh rotting as if weeks had passed. Then the real horror began. Their technology, so advanced, so reliable, began to fail. Power grids fluctuated, weapons misfired, targeting systems locked onto phantoms. Their own ships, hanging in low orbit, reported systems going offline one by one. The planet was fighting them, not with armies, but with itself. And then, through the interference, came the first transmission. Not static. Not distortion. Laughter. The laughter was human. Cold. Amused. It cut through their encrypted channels, untraceable. The officers demanded identification, but there was no response. Just silence. Then, one by one, their own men began disappearing. Patrols sent out never returned. Motion trackers detected movement, but nothing was ever there when they looked. A squadron set up an ambush, positioning themselves with overlapping fields of fire, scanning every angle. Seconds later, their vitals flatlined. When reinforcements arrived, all that remained were their weapons, neatly arranged in a line. Panic turned to paranoia. They had faced resistance before, primitive armies, desperate insurgents, but this was something else. The enemy didn't attack in waves or with brute force. They struck from the shadows, precise and methodical. Traps appeared overnight, blending seamlessly into the terrain. Soldiers were lured into deadfalls, their own senses betraying them. Snipers picked off high-ranking officers, yet no projectiles were ever recovered. The officers turned to their remaining ships, demanding immediate extraction. But the fleet was silent. No acknowledgements, no orders, nothing. When they manually accessed the logs, they found a final message from their command ship, sent just minutes earlier. All hands lost. They're inside. It made no sense. No enemy had breached orbit. No weapons had fired. And yet, the largest warship in their fleet was gone. The remaining troops abandoned all protocol, scrambling for any functioning transport. But every launch sequence failed, every shuttle disabled. Their technology had been flawless. Now, it was worthless. Then, over the comms, the voice returned. You should have left when you had the chance. The last survivors gathered in the wreckage of their command post, weapons drawn, scanning every shadow. There were only a handful left now, the once mighty invasion force reduced to terrified remnants. Their leader, once confident, now shook as he tried to issue orders. No one listened. There was nowhere left to run. A distant hum signaled a ship's engines. One of their last remaining transports. It had been damaged, barely operational, but it was their only chance. They sprinted toward it, discipline forgotten, desperation driving them forward. As the ramp lowered, a surge of hope flickered. Then the lights cut out. In the pitch darkness, something moved. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed through the hull. Their weapons flickered, targeting systems useless. One soldier fired blindly, plasma bolts illuminating the interior for a fraction of a second. It was enough to see the shapes standing inside. Humans. Not soldiers. Not armies. Just people. Watching. Waiting. Smiling. The ramp retracted. The engines flared, then died. The ship imploded, metal twisting inward as if crushed by an unseen force. Silence. Only one alien remained, trembling, unable to move. His comm device crackled. The voice was back. This planet is not yours. It never was. A brilliant light flashed, an energy surge unlike anything recorded. When the fleet finally received a distress beacon weeks later, only one escape pod remained, drifting in space. Inside was a single survivor, incoherent, repeating the same phrase over and over. Do not return. Do not return. Do not return. No one did.